Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Conversations with Nia. Today, we're going to be talking about leadership with purpose. What is leadership with purpose? Joining me today is Pastor Edward Addison. He is a pastor, a theologian, the creator of Leadership Matters, which is a platform that focuses to deliberate key issues, which improves your leadership practices and promotes excellence in leadership. Pastor Edward, we're so honored to have you on. How are you?
It's a great pleasure to be with you in on your platform. What a great job you do.
Thank you. I've been a fan ever since we connected on social media. I've just
Uh,
watched your lives, your shows, Leadership Matters. Took a lot of pointers. I didn't tell you what I did. And you know what? Essentially, I see you as a leadership guru, pretty
oh,
much.
goodness me.
And from your perspective, then, just think about leadership overall. How would you define it? You've talked about leadership a lot. You know the ins and outs. You know what makes for a good leader, a bad leader. How would you define leadership?
First and foremost, thank you for the accolades and the leadership guru, which I try and get away from. That's why I said goodness me. But in terms of leadership, when we had this discussion somewhat, I'm a reluctant leadership principle or whatever one might call it nowadays, because there's so many people in this leadership space that it kind of gives me heart flutters to be called a leadership guru, if I might say that. But the definition, what would I define leadership as? In a nutshell, leadership is the ability to influence a group of people or a person for good. Or, and this is so often what we fail to put within our definition of leadership, to influence a group of people for good or for bad towards a particular task. And why I say for bad is because we often talk about good leadership and we talk about bad leadership. And so the influence that the person has can be either for good or for bad. Um, Hence, why leadership is important. I say leadership matters. It is having a position. Another way of looking at it, it's having a position of influence and using that. And here comes the good and bad again, to motivate or to manipulate people towards a cause. Now, that cause can be a cause that profits others positively or negatively. And so that's in a nutshell. When I say that, there is selfish leadership, and there is selfless leadership, and we can banter those two against each other. May I just add this at the end and maybe develop it slightly if we can? Is that leadership is a secondary calling. And what I mean by that, it's a secondary calling that evolves out of a primary calling. In short, there should be a reason why the leader exists, which means if you know why you exist as a leader, you will know how you should lead as a leader. And so often people don't know the why they exist as a leader. And this takes place in the political space or in other spaces. They don't know the reason why they're placed as a leader. And because they don't know the reason why they're placed as a leader, they don't then know how they should lead as leaders.
Very, very powerful, Pastor Edward. And I have to agree with you. Leadership is a calling, essentially, right? And I love what you said about good and bad leadership. We're going to explore that a little bit more. Then you also talk about selfish and selfless leadership. So, in terms of good and bad leadership, what would be an example of bad leadership? And feel free to expand in terms of maybe talking about social media, because I do have my bias in terms of how social media is functioning. So
Yeah.
what would be an example of bad leadership?
Well, so often the simple truth of the matter is that we talk of different forms of leadership: transformational leadership, transactional leadership, situational leadership. But the simple truth of the matter is that when a leader is focusing everything upon themselves rather than the cause by which or for which they are placed there, then it's bad leadership. You know, and we know, we come from a culture, we both come rooted in Nigeria, where the political space is marred with corruption and a whole bunch of me, mine, and I. So when leadership is focused on me, mine, and I, or what I can get out of where I am, my influence, my position of influence, then it qualifies as bad leadership. There's a scripture I often use which says, where the people groan, where there is bad leadership, the people groan. And simply put, where people complain or perpetually or incessantly complain about their leaders, come on, whether we like it or not, there is bad leadership within that space. And good leadership, we look at this in itself as a thing. There are qualities of good leadership. There are generic qualities of good leadership that we would selflessness, kindness, calmness, thinking about others, having a cause that is worthy to put your life down for, and sowing yourself into that, irrespective of how it comes back at you. But more importantly, we see good leadership in terms of a selfless life, a life that says other people matter more than me. So often, and I use this example, Winston Churchill and Abraham Lincoln are two iconic leaders on your side of the ocean and my side of the ocean here.
Yes, yes.
And Abraham Lincoln laid down his life for a cause, the emancipation of the black people, slavery through the Civil
Of
War,
slavery,
and,
yes.
and never won another election because a statesman thinks about a generation. A politician thinks about an election. The same thing with Winston Churchill. He won. He said, "All I can promise you," was up in front about the war and said, "I can promise you blood, toil, and tears, but we will win this." After winning, bringing them through World War, he never won another election. And so good leadership is selfless, irrespective of the sacrifice or what happens to the leader after the course. They do what is right and what they feel is going to benefit the cause of the people that they are leading. Therein you find good leadership.
Very powerful. There was a part where you said, "Come on now." And I was like, yes, yes, we're going deep. We're going deep. The fire is coming. That's good. I agree 100%. And like you said, a perfect example of bad leadership. Come on. It's what's happening in so many African countries, right? With corruption and whatnot. I mean, we can all agree to that. I do like bringing up social media as I did earlier. As a millennial, we created social media. I'm going to take that credit for the generation itself. So how you see the world shifting and transforming into more, of course, innovative, technology-based social media, again, I'm saying, would you consider the way the world is shifting bad leadership? We have a lot of influencers now, positive influencers, negative influencers, but it seems as though that we are more exposed to what I personally consider not so good influencers, which also count as negative leadership. This is my opinion. This is my opinion. So what would you say that's an example of bad leadership, or would you say it has its positive, it has its negatives?
The simple truth is that you highlight a malady of today's generation, which is very concerning. Uh, Notice earlier on, I pointed at poignantly the generic qualities of good leadership and true leadership: kindness, thoughtfulness, selflessness, putting the cause of others before that. Now we are in a social media generation, you millennials, as you would say, and Generation Z
Yes.
have
Generation Z,
created.
millennials,
Yeah,
Generation
exactly.
Y.
That is heavily materialistic, number one, and we can say that has come from other generations, but incredibly fickle and superficial. And this is fueled by social media. It is also a generation that has instant answers at its fingertips. So there's no need to dig deep for knowledge. However, it leaves us in a predicament where it doesn't matter where your source of knowledge comes from. There is no absolute truth. And so when we look at that, you use the term correctly. When we talk about leadership, we say leadership is about influence. Connivingly or cunningly enough, social media has taken that term and and kind of bastardized it, if I might say that, in terms of the word influencers. And
Yes,
so
yes.
often I've become a reluctant social media user, and I came on Facebook just before lockdown, so my social media presence has been minimum because I'm not that generation. And then Instagram and what else is there? Twitter and
TikTok,
TikTok.
Facebook.
I haven't got a hang of TikTok yet in that sense. But the simple truth of the matter is this: I notice when I post things, if it's deep and thoughtful, a few people will like it. But
Yes,
put up there a picture, just a picture of yourself, a great looking picture, and then the whole world is clicking on it that they like it or they love it or whatever it is. And it
exactly.
takes and so this term influencer that is put within the social media space then helps people mismanage leadership as a term also, because leadership is about influence. But my definition at the beginning stands in this space also. It is either about good influence or about bad influence. So one can use the social media space for good influence and then be a proponent of good leadership, or use that
Yes.
space in fickle, fleshly ways that make for bad leadership. So, social media, the question we ask is social media good or bad? Depends on the context and how it's being used in the leadership space.
Very well said. And I have to agree with you. When I post a picture of myself in just a beautiful outfit, oh, the likes and the comments, it's literally rolling in across all platforms, Facebook and Instagram. Then when I post, maybe like a flyer of an event that could really help in terms of enhancing people's, maybe skill set, whatever it is, you get maybe 2 or 3 likes
Yeah,
compared to 200, 300,
exactly.
possibly 1,000 likes. So I definitely echo what you're saying.